There was overwhelming evidence that was listed point by prosecutors there in Latah County.
Yeah, as you heard, it was an emotional day at the Ada County Courthouse as the plea deal has divided some of the families of the victims.
Talking about everything from the purchasing of the K-bar knife, the sharpener, the sheath that was left behind, DNA on that sheath that matched Brian Kohberger, that he had driven around the area. He was caught on surveillance video several times there. He turns his phone off, turns it back on after the murders. And maybe one of the most chilling details, he takes a selfie just hours after the killings in his mirror with a thumbs up.
Remember, this is their first time, for some of them, facing him there head on, listening to him say, in fact, he entered that house with the intent to commit burglary, entered that house, killed all of their children, and then took a selfie after. And he had to admit guilt on each and every one of those videos.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Well, it seemed to be an emotional day for everyone except the knife killer at the center of it, who deadpanned his answers and didn't seem in the least remorseful about the 4 young lives he'd taken, or for the fact that, in the context that he was in, he's making this plea, he's giving up the rest of his own life. He didn't seem very emotional about that either. It's interesting to me that there were family members who wanted the plea deal, but they were drowned out by the media and social media, trumpeting those who didn't. And there's an interview on News Nation where you literally have that trumpeting going on. Who do we want to interview? Well, the person who is the most vocal about opposing it. And is that really in the interest of justice, or is that in the interest of your news network? In the interest of entertainment, or is it in the legal interest and in society's interests? And I think one does need to look at personal interest versus the interest of the collective, the greater good. Yesterday, Judge Hippler opened proceedings by spending quite a few minutes chastising the public for their attempts, voicemails, emails, letters, to try to get him to change his mind. And that's been a big story. Alongside the story is the circus surrounding this horrible incident. It meant a lot to me to see not just anger and outrage, but also to see grief and humanity on display in the aftermath to this case. We're going to deal with the response from Maddie Mogen's family. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you find this analysis worthwhile, meaningful, important, necessary, please do hit the thanks button, and let's get started.
After the hearing, Madison Mogen's family attorney says they support the plea deal and that the family wants to move forward and heal.
What was also heartwarming to see and to note is the heartfelt nature in which this attorney shared the family statement, an attorney who provided his services pro bono to Maddie's family. Why? Because he cared. And you could see and hear the emotion from this particular attorney as he read out the statement.
Thank you for all your dedicated, diligent, and tireless commitment to justice and the successful outcome reached today. We support the plea agreement 100%. We now embark on a new path. We turn from tragedy and mourning. We turn from darkness and uncertainty of the legal process to the light of the future. To those young and bright attorneys out there looking for purpose and meaning in your profession, I invite you to join the effort of crime victim attorneys to bring victims justice with compassion, empathy, humility, and understanding. This case is not the end of violence. This case is not the end of lawlessness. We need your help to bring hope and healing to the innocent caught in the crossfire of life.
This tribute to Maddie and gesture of thanks is, for me, one of the most poignant, since Maddie seemed to be Kohberger's primary target. He seemed primarily fixated on her. Did he meet her at the Mad Greek restaurant, which also served vegan meals? will we ever know.
Imagine, and this didn't turn out to be the lengthy bombshell trial that many had pictured, a trial that would have brought even more attention to this case. As we wait now for sentencing, do you think that the community there will be able to start closing this heartbreaking chapter and begin to heal?
I think so. Like I've said before, the students did an amazing job handling it, and many of them have gone on and graduated now.
One sentence sums up that entire hearing. The judge asking Kohberger, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? Brian Kohberger saying yes.
Brian Kohberger's family was also present in court today. What was their reaction when he pleaded guilty?
I think they were to my left. It was so strange. I recognized the dad from, the pulled video image of him. His mom seemed really contained, very stoic in her face. His dad actually seemed more emotional, sort of squinting and looking down. And of course, the other families in the courtroom, it was just devastating to hear these charges over and over again about their own children sitting in the room with the person who's admitting to murdering their kids. It was a very tense and emotional place to be.
But not everyone was happy with the plea deal.
Is this justice?
No.
No.
Kaylee Goncalves' family arrived, but Kaylee's father, Steve, did not go in. He decided not to go as a protest to the plea agreement. I caught up with Steve as he was walking away from the courthouse.
All right, Kira, the Goncalves family is walking across the street here. Mr. Goncalves, how are you feeling right now?
I'm pretty let down.
You're let down, you said? Yeah. You said earlier that you made a deal, they made a deal with the devil. You still feel that way?
Yeah. Brian's the devil.
The defendant is the devil.
Steve, I watched you earlier today. My heart was breaking as you, in protest, left court because it's no secret you were not on board with this plea bargain. You're not the only family member not on board. I just wanted to touch base with you and just see how you are tonight. How are you processing, and what your thoughts are after this momentous day?
My family feels used.
And ahead of today's hearing, Steve, Kaylee's father, walked up to the courtroom with his wife and family, but didn't go inside. And after his family went into the courtroom, he walked away from the courtroom, saying that he didn't agree with this plea deal.
And so what I think you're going to see going forward is a sort of a split. Those who accept the plea deal, agree that it's the best thing, and I predict they're going to be in the minority. And then you're going to see, and take note of the news channels and the YouTubers who jump on the indignation, because, that sells. That's what that triggers people and gets people watching, the emotions, the indignation. But is that the appropriate emotion, the appropriate way to deal with this? Because the law doesn't think so. And you might say, I don't care about the law, I care about how I feel. Is that the right way to deal with this? And now might be a good time to make a decision. Which channel do you want to ally yourself with? The indignant, emotional channels dealing with a crime that don't really care about the law, or those that do, but nevertheless show the appropriate way of grieving about this case? And I must say, for me personally, Ethan Chapin's family just are a model for how a family has dealt with something that is devastating. I've dealt with something devastating as well, and there are ways to deal with it, and there are ways not to deal with it. And to the extent that you go down a certain path, it ends up aggravating the original damage, in other words, adding insult to injury.
The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. The court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea, and finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered.
Remember, the families will have a chance to make themselves heard in court during sentencing each and every member of the victim's family.
We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to take it further than that, but I am interested to hear what you think about the plea deal. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.